So a while back, I watched this documentary by Max Joseph called Bookstores, in which he searches for this solution to how he can read more books in this age of TikTok where everything is trying to distract us. I used to have exactly that problem. I really struggled to read books, to finish anything that I bought, really. But I discovered something which has not only opened up the world of literature for me, but also changed the way in which I think about approaching reading, and that is reading short books. In this video, I kind of want to lay out the case for short books and why I think we should all be reading a few more of them, and how we can think about reading in the same way that we think about discovering music by reading more short books. So, my first introduction to reading short books came when I found this box of Penguin books in a charity shop in North London and thought I'd have a crack at reading all of them. So, what's in the box? Well, it's kind of a bit of everything. I think it's designed to be a sort of greatest hits of all of Penguin's publishing from the last 70 years. You've got a bit of history in there, you've got short stories, you've got essays, poetry, and even things like cookbooks. A lot of it is directly from the author's full-length works, and you can usually see on the cover page exactly where it's come from. I'm quite a slow reader, but I can still get through one of these books in about an hour or two, depending how dense it is. I read about one or two a week, and I got through the whole box set in a year. And pretty much all of that reading was done on the tube. In that time, I also managed to read a full few length novels as well. So for me, the short book is to the novel, kind of like what the single is to the album. It's some of the artist's best work in a little snippet that gives you a taste of whether you want to continue and listen to more. But the way we approach literature can sometimes be kind of strange. Imagine if the only way to discover new music was to listen to an artist's whole album from start to finish every time. That can kind of be how we approach reading. You pick up a 500-page novel from Waterstones, and maybe for someone like me, that could take 3 weeks or a month to finish. And I might not even like it. Before, I was only getting through maybe 10 books a year. But now, by reading the short books, I can read them and then, if I like the artist, decide to get their whole book. That was the case with, say, Jonathan Safran Foer, whose short book I really liked, and then I picked up his book, and then I picked up books that he had recommended as well, and it was a nice little chain that I could go follow. And before you comment, well, why don't you just read a couple of chapters of the book, and if you don't like it, put it down? Well, it's good advice, but I've got to admit, I've never put a book down and not felt guilty about it. And there's a bigger problem than that, which is that until I read a lot of authors, I didn't really know what I liked. I hadn't really taken the time to develop that taste, which I think takes time to develop. So to finish up, I want to talk about where you might find these books if you want to take up this approach. And this is where we kind of come up to a problem. It's not a very popular category of book. Actually, in most bookshops you go into, they won't have these books on the shelves. One bookseller told me that actually they only print them when they've got spare paper left after a run, and that otherwise it's not a particularly common thing. Now, the main company that does these is Penguin. They seem to really dominate the space here. But also Faber have a short collection called Faber 90, which is mainly fiction books. And I've got to admit, I haven't dug into it properly yet, but it's very much the same kind of thing that Penguin do. On the Penguin side of things, you've got the 70th anniversary box set, which I mentioned earlier. They also had a 60th anniversary box set, which I thought was pretty good. You've got these green modern classics, which is anything after 1900. It's a bit more highbrow though, so there's a bit less range of genres than you get in the 60s and 70s. And you've also got these little black classics, which is generally anything before 1900. Besides that, there's also these vintage kind of colourful short books that tend to be kind of excerpts from large novels. They're good. That's also owned by Penguin. And if you're into kind of the more thinky side of things, Penguin again do this great ideas series, which are a bit longer, 100 pages. And you've got Oxford University Press, who do these kind of introductions. Although I've got to admit, because the introductions are kind of purposely written for the purpose of explaining, they're not often as good as these ones, which are kind of cherry-picked examples of the author's greatest works. So make your own decisions on that. Besides that, if you're interested in fiction, I can highly recommend reading The New Yorker's weekly fiction that comes out with the magazine. Also, The Atlantic does that. That's more like monthly. And if you like to listen, you can get the New York fiction on their podcast as well. The world of radio, maybe I'll do a whole other episode on that because there's so much to dig into there. I love the stuff they do on Radio 4. I think that's a great way to get into fiction and expand your horizons. And there's some good stuff on Spotify as well, but that'll have to be for next time. Let me know your thoughts. Definitely go and watch that Bookshops documentary by Max something. And see you next time.